never faze me. They watch the steps that I be taking. That's why they say that I'm amazing. Been the top dog before the nonsense. I've always been a public figure. Now the frame didn't got too big because more people want to get up in it.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm your host, John Madsen. This is the show. Excited to be here right now. And I know this episode is going to hit one of my favorite topics in the entire world. And so I'm going to get right into it. Proverbs 23:7 says, "For as he thinks in his heart, so is he." James Allen wrote a book, As a Man Thinketh. And the whole concept of the book is this: as a man thinketh in his heart, so shall he be. Neville Goddard wrote, "Change the conception of yourself and you will automatically change the world which you live." Do not try to change people. They are messengers telling you who you are. Revalue yourself and they will confirm the change. You see, the only problem in your life that you have is that your conception of you is what it is. Because if it was anything different, your bank account would be different, your body would be different, your relationship would be different, your friendships would be different, your network would be different, everything in your life would be different. Now, for some of you, you're high performers. You're here. You're doing business at a high level. Your body is great. You are winning. The reason that is so is because your belief about who you are makes everything else automatic. The reality is what it is. But if you wanted to reach the next level, if you're anything like me who's sitting here, it's like, hey, life's pretty good. Like, I've done a lot of cool things. Like, I got a great life. I got a great wife. I got a great body. I live where I want to live in the same neighborhood. I drive some nice cars, got a six pack, life is good. If you're a high achiever, you probably want to be a higher achiever. I'll just throw it out there. I'm not where I am. I'm not today where I want to be, regardless of whether you think that's good or not good, or I'm comparing myself to whoever I'm comparing myself to. I believe I'm capable of more. So the only way that I reach the next level is I change the concept of who I am. And maybe you're a person who logs into your bank account and you're not happy with what you see. And the reason that is because of the concept of who you are. Maybe you're a person that looks into the mirror and you don't like what you see. And the problem with that is that the concept of who you are is confirming your reality that you don't like. And so the very greatest news that I'm going to share with you today is that there's actually only one problem that you have in your life if you want to reach the next level. If you want to go from broke to rich, if you want to go from broke body to wealthy body, there's really only one thing you have to work on. And I'm going to tell you how to work on it in this episode. As a man thinketh in his heart, so shall he be. As a woman thinketh in her heart, so shall she be. Proverbs 23:7, "For as he thinks in his heart, so is he. So as she thinks in her heart, so is she." As I went down this personal development, self-improvement rabbit hole a decade ago, and I've been just voraciously consuming every book, I'm listening to podcasts, I can't get more excited about improvement in my life. The secret or the center of the truth of what so many people have tried to say is not only in the Bible and Proverbs or a classic like As a Man Thinketh, or in an author like Neville who states it a little bit differently. The conception of yourself will automatically change the world that you see. There's that common thread that just punches you in the face. And I get excited about it because in my mind, the only question I have to consider is, what concept do I have to create of myself to reach the level or the outcome or the goals that I have? Because if I had that concept burned into my heart now, I would already have it. And so how do I change the concept? Because right now, my reality, my bank account, my body, my life is solidified into reality based on one thing, which is who I believe I am. At the center of it. And so I'm excited to share with you in this episode the 3 ways you have to utilize to change the concept of who you are. Because if you're a broke person right now, your concept of you is that you're a broke person. If you are a fat person and you have 30 pounds to lose, it's because your concept of yourself is fat. If your concept of yourself is fat, you do what fat people do. If your concept of yourself is that you're broke, you do what broke people do. automatically. And that's the most interesting thing in the world, because if a person just behaved, let's just say a fat person behaved differently for a little while, but in their heart of hearts, they still believed that they were a fat person, what would happen is they could change the behavior temporarily, but if the identity never changed, any result that they got by changing their behavior would ultimately rewind back to who they believed they were. So you can never outperform long-term your concept of who you are. And that's why so many people go from being fat to getting a little bit in shape to being fat again. They believe in their hearts, and so shall they be fat. That's why so many broke people stay broke long term. They can try with all their might to change their behavior, but without their heart of hearts knowing that who they believe they are is rich or wealthy, they never enjoy that reality. One of my favorite experiences with this was back in 2003, playing for Coach Urban Meyer, who was 36 at the time. Essentially, I was at a junior college and I transferred from junior college to University of Utah. And I missed winter conditioning when Urban got there, and then I missed spring ball. So Urban had a little history with this team. But essentially what happened was, going into the season, there was what was called a press day, where the coach and all the other coaches of the conference would gather and all the media would gather, and they usually would take 2 representatives, the guys on the team, to travel with the coach. And at the end of this, each coach in each conference would vote or essentially rank the best teams to the worst teams, and it would be in order. So it'd be like 1 through 8 back in the Mountain West. Right? We were in the Mountain West, which was a non-Power 5 conference, and we get back, Urban Meyer gets back, and essentially everybody ranked the University of Utah to be 7th out of 8 teams in the Mountain West. And so shortly after that, I remember Urban addressing the team for what was my first time. The other guys had experience with him in winter and spring, but I go there. It's my first experience at a team barbecue. Urban's up there, and he starts talking about the Ohio States and the Michigans and the Notre Dames of the world, and how he's been around those players and how he's now been around our players long enough, and that we were a top 5 program. And he said a word that was so stealth that it took me 2 decades to really understand the power of it. He said, the University of Utah, you guys are a top 5 football team when you decide that you're a top 5 football team. He didn't say act. He didn't say you are a top 5 football team when you act like a top 5 football team. He said you are a top 5 football team when you decide that you're a top 5 football team. And I go back to Proverbs 23:7, for as he thinks in his heart, so is he. So as a team thinks in their heart, they are top 5, so are they. James Allen, as a man thinketh in his heart, so shall they be. As a team, the University of Utah 2003 think in their hearts that they are a top 5 football team, so shall they be. Neville, change the conception of yourself and you'll automatically change the world in which you live. Change the conception of who the team believes they are, and they automatically change the reality that they see. I live this shit. You'll be a top 25 football team when you decide that you'll be a top 25 football team. He didn't say decide in our hearts. He left that one up to us to figure out. I had to take 2 decades to reconstruct, this was a wild thing that actually happened, as an example. And I have a lot of other examples of this. And it took us 18 months to decide. Long story short, the very first year, we go 10-2. We won the Mountain West Conference Championship. Understand, once again, that we were chosen to take 7th out of 8 teams by all the coaches in that conference, and we won the outright championship. We went 10-2. We lost the game in heartbreaking fashion to Texas A&M, but what it did is show us that we could play with the big boys. And so the very next week, Oregon comes to Salt Lake City, and Oregon's wearing their fucking fancy uniforms with feathers and a whole bunch of cool Oregon Duck shit. And they were ranked top 15 in the nation, Power 5 conference, versus just a mid-major, and we win. And then the very next week, Berkeley comes in with a quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, and they're ranked in the top 15 too. And we go back to back. We win in the 4th quarter in an amazing game, and which was Alex Smith's first game as the University of Utah quarterback, by the way. And all of a sudden, we've cracked into the top 25. We play the rest of the season. We lose one more game that we shouldn't have lost. We go 10-2. We win the championship. Okay, we're still not top 5, but that started to build our belief. Training camp going into my junior year, 2004, every person in that locker room felt it in their hearts. We were top 5. We couldn't see how other teams were practicing. We didn't have any evidence of any opponents other than what they did last year. They had the same thing on us. But we decided in our hearts, notice the word that I used, we decided that we were top 5. So the very first game, college football kicks off. We're the first game of the college football season. Texas A&M flies into Salt Lake City. It's an ESPN game, and we just completely blow them out of the building. Power 5 conference versus a mid-major conference, and we never looked back. We went undefeated, Fiesta Bowl champions. Alex Smith gets drafted as the number 1 overall pick, and we ended up ranked number 4 in all of college football. The first non-BCS football team to break into the BCS system and then win the Fiesta Bowl and then end up winning or ultimately being ranked top 4. They didn't have the playoff system back then. As I think about Urban at 36 years old addressing the team, whether it was a mistake or whether he meant it the way that he said it, but I know for a fact he said it just the way I remember it, which is you are a top 5 football program when you decide you're a top 5 football program. And at the time, we were not even top 80. And so we thought he was crazy. We had to borrow his belief for a second. But what he said was absolutely true. And how could it not be true? It's in Proverbs. All the greatest authors have utilized this metaphysical type of learning to try to get their point across. Most people just miss it. And so most people try to change their behavior without trying to change the concept that they have in their hearts of themselves. Most people believe outside circumstance controls their destiny. But in reality, as hard as it is to believe, if you could change the way you saw yourself, your whole reality would be different. If you saw yourself differently, your bank account would look differently. If you saw yourself differently, your body would look differently. If you had a different concept of yourself in your heart, the reality as you know it today would be entirely different. And so some of you are doing good. Some of you have your fitness in order. You have your business in order. But if that's you and you're a high performer, I promise you, there's another level waiting for you. And you're wondering right now, how do I reach the next level? And so you're trying a bunch of things. You're trying to will with all your might, different ideas, strategies, partnerships, fitness programs, whatever it is. And your results are kind of steady. They're right in alignment with who you believe you are. And so the only way you reach the next level is you believe yourself to be someone who is capable of the next level. The concept of you has to change if your results are going to change. It can be no other way. And so we're on this human journey, and we have to essentially, if you want to ascend levels, you have to figure out either accidentally or hopefully on purpose that you get to control all of this by simply controlling the conception of you, by simply controlling your self-image, by controlling your identity, by controlling who you believe you are in your heart. And so how do you do that? Well, number 1, you use your imagination. You get to imagine who you want to be. You get to imagine what top 5 looks like. You get to imagine what being fit as fuck looks like. And so a lot of us, all of us, have one of the most powerful tools that we were equipped with as human beings, which is our imagination, and you use it wrong all the time. See, some people are like, I'm not good at imagination. It's like, yes, you are. You worry all the time. You doubt yourself all the time. And when you worry, your imagination is focused on what you don't want to happen. And so when you're worried, you're imagining, you're picturing worst case scenarios. And then those worst case scenarios, you start acting in a way that essentially self-prophesizes these worst case scenarios. And you're like, I knew that would happen. It's like, no, you made that happen. Your imagination wasn't focused on who you wanted to be. It was focused on what you didn't want to happen. You're still using your imagination. You're just using it backwards. And so if you're going to change the concept of who you are, you have to use your imagination to focus on with clarity who you want to be. And the more natural that feels, the faster your world changes. When you decide in your heart, your reality solidifies into your reality. And so that's number 1. Number 2 is you have to change the feeling. So when you're imagining yourself, your higher self, your best self, you have to attach a feeling to it, because a feeling is an emotion. An emotion is the language of the unconscious mind. And so the feeling's actually the secret, which is another book by Neville that is incredible. But when you're imagining yourself at the montage, at the pool, taking your shirt off, shredded like a savage, the imagination is one thing, but the feeling is different. How does it feel? Like, how do you feel in that situation? How do you feel at the core when you come home and you're in the bedroom and your spouse can't take their hands off of you because you've taken immaculate care for the one body you have? How does it feel when you walk into a negotiation as a strong and powerful man, a man without weakness, a man that is fit and athletic, and you see weakness on other men? How does it feel? How does it feel to be looked at as a real life superhero to your kids when their friends' dads are just a dad? You see, the feeling has to be associated with the imagery, and both those things, to be cemented into a new concept, has to be imagined with repetition over and over and over again until it feels so natural that your reality confirms the change. And that's when you know. See, on some level, like, I should have known this a long time ago. When I was a young kid, when I was 10 years old, 11 years old, 12 years old, 13 years old, I was a professional ball player in my heart. I believed it in my heart. And no amount of not getting written about in the school papers, no amount of not getting all state awards, in fact, no amount of not even playing high school football, reality, my objective reality, could be a detriment to the belief I had in my heart of hearts, which was that I was a professional athlete. It shouldn't be surprising that I fused to that goal mentally and spiritually, and so it had to be. We are masterful creators. I had the image in my head almost every day. I had the feeling of what it would be like to be a pro ball player almost every day. Even when my senses were like, you're crazy, bro. Like, you're crazy. You didn't play high school football. How are you going to play college? Like, you're crazy. I felt it. And sometimes we forget it. I forgot a lot of these lessons, right? And then number 3, you change your language. Your unconscious mind takes everything personal. And so in the name of being funny or being humorous or being sarcastic, I hear people all the time put themselves down. They call themselves fat. They call themselves lazy. They call themselves whatever they call themselves. And if you're going to change the concept of you, you can no longer tolerate any language that is detrimental to who you want to be. And so you have to reject all of that from other people and definitely from yourself. So you change your language. You guard your tongue. You don't speak of anything that you don't want. You only speak to your own greatness. You don't talk shit about other people. Why? Because your unconscious mind takes everything personal. So if I'm talking about other people, I should talk about them in high regard, and so should you. And so the 3 ways you can change the concept of you, and I hope at this point I've sold you on this idea to at least explore the possibility of what this might mean for your life if you want to change it, whether it be in your fitness or whether it be in your business. I would hope that this episode at least does that, which puts you on a path that you're like, I gotta know more. But these are the 3 ways. You change your image with your imagination, you change your feeling associated with that new conception, and you change your language. And then the last one that I should have put on that I didn't is persistence. You persist until you succeed. And so you have to persist in the imagery, the imagination, you have to persist in the feeling, and you have to persist in the language used for the betterment of you, not the detriment. And you persist until your world changes. See, that's why we're different at Superhuman than any other fitness program in the world. A lot of people can tell you to count macros this way and to, you should work out 3 to 4 hours a week. And we all know that shit. But why do you actually do what you do? And why are you actually not in the shape that you should be in? Why? You know what to do. Knowing what to do is irrelevant at this point. Why do you do it? Because the concept of you lines up exactly to what you do. And the people in our program, we learn how to change the concept of who we are. Because if we do that, when we go from fat to fit as fuck, we never go back because we adopted a new conception of who we are. That's the biggest difference. And so whether you want to go from being fat to fit or broke to wealthy or in a bad relationship to a good one, doesn't matter where you're at. The conception of you in your heart is the only thing that actually matters. For as he thinks in his heart, so is he. For as she thinks in her heart, so is she. Hope you like this episode. If you want to interact on social, I changed my Instagram from John Madsen Official to a brand new account. So I didn't just change the name. I left that old account and I moved my new account to I am John Madsen. I'd love for the follow there. I'd love for you to go on this ride with me. There's fire content on there. I came to the conclusion that I didn't give a shit about volume of content. content anymore. If it's fire, it's going on there. If it sucks, it's not. And so it's the most unfiltered I've ever been on social platform. I'd love for you to go over there. I am John Madsen. Thank you for the 5-star reviews. Thank you for sharing this episode. Thank you for screenshotting this and sending this to me on social so I can show the world that other people are listening and I'm not just talking to myself. I love you guys. We'll see you next week.